We talked a lot about volunteerism this morning, and that's what keeps us going. And that is what is the strength of SKOCH Group, that so many senior people come and contribute their time. So while historically we've drawn a lot from the academia, we've drawn a lot from the government, from regulators, from bankers, it is perhaps for the first time that we've been able to draw from very enlightened people from the private sector who are helping us solve very large problems for the country. So if you look at the Honorable Prime Minister's vision of India 2047, which is India to be a higher middle income country by then, what we really need is spatially dispersed, job generative, equitable growth, and that cannot happen without very active involvement from the government as well as the private sector. And if you look at how the private sector can be globally competitive as well as deliver to these objectives is through reducing cost while expanding business, which is scalability, sustainability, and security. So we said that can some of the best practices be identified and we learn from the private sector. So we set up a task force. So I invite some of the members who are here already, please do join us on the stage. I've already introduced you. So Kirsi, please come. Come Rajiv, come Rucha. So I just want to take you through what we've done so far. I'll try and be very fast about it. So the reason why we're all together is we are examining public digital infrastructure and can corporate sector use it. You've got incredible things like the India Stack, DigiLocker, Aadhaar, so on and so forth. So how can this be utilized by the private sector? And how do you make total economic impact of all the digitalization and IT initiatives in India be felt louder in the country? So our approach was primary and secondary research, and we've set up these committees. Each CIO is participating in or heading one of the committees. The core group is Sanjeevan Shirke, Rucha Nanavati, Anish Shah, who's from Jio, Kirsi, who's from BSC, Manoranjan Kumar from Shree Cements, Arvind Siva Ramakrishnan from Apollo, Rajiv Batra from Bennett Coleman, Avinash Raghavendra, CIO Axis Bank, Shiv Bhasin from NSC, Shiju Rathar from SBI Mutual Fund, KRC Murthy from Kotak Mahindra, and Mr. Sudhir Nair, who heads Apple in India. So it's just the core group, and we hope to have close to 100 members from the private sector in this who are going to say how India is going to scale to a higher middle income country by 2047. So besides this, you have Dr. Phatak is there as one of the members who's giving us the inspirational guidance from the academics. So, based on the discussions we had, it was decided that we will find a total economic impact task force in the area of cloud, network and security, database security, endpoint, and overall security. The reason you see a lot of security here is, I think, one of the daunting issues that the country faces is security. And when this task force was set up, it was set up in the background of the AIIMS cyber attack. The entire medical system of AIIMS was held at ransom due to this cyber security issues, and we found that the threat came from the PCs. So while data centers, etc., are very secure, a lot of effort goes there. The least secure area is the endpoint, which is the front point where the user sits. So the task force areas have been divided, and then we said that could we go and look at why is it that India ends up buying suboptimal endpoints. So when you are saying that most of the security vulnerability is at the endpoint, the point essentially is that are secure endpoints not available, or are they expensive, or are they considered expensive? So we find the general perception was that while it is important to have endpoint security, it is possibly a little more costly to buy a secure endpoint than a regular PC. Now, I come from a background, we are SKOCH, we are MSME, rather micro side of MSME. And even we use very secure endpoints because we have a freedom of choice and we have the experience curve behind us. I mean, Scotch is almost an entirely Mac environment. We were earlier not on Mac, we were on regular PCs. And the kind of nightmares we've faced due to cyber attacks, to ransomware and things like that. And ever since we moved to a Mac environment, for the past almost 4 or 5 years, we've had zero problems. And one of the things that we find is that none of our Macs retires. When we have a normal PC or laptop, every 1.5, 2 years, we need to replace it because it goes defunct. But the laptop from Mac that we bought, let's say 8 years back, is still being used in the organization. So it got us thinking as to why more and more people are not in a more secure environment. Now, this is not about Mac or PCs. This is basically about a more heavy duty endpoint, more secure endpoint PC. That seems to be a national requirement if we have to face on the cyber threats. So when we talk to the CIOs and we said that, why is it that you say that all this is true and the senior management and some people do get Macs, why is it that not everyone gets Macs? So the common refrain from all CIOs was that it's a tough sell to CFOs. So when you go to chief financial officers, they look at, let's say, there's the price is X for a PC, but the cost for a Mac may be X.2. So how do you justify that? And they look at just that initial procurement cost. So we said that, is there a better way of looking at it? So we looked at international best practices in the case, and we found that Forrester for 20 years, it's a very large consulting company, has been doing work in the area of total economic impact, which looks at IT impact, business impact, risk and uncertainty, and strategic impact. It combines all of this to put a value to the thing. So we said that if these are the imperatives for a business case, then what are the key cost areas? So it is IT support and operational costs. So when you buy a PC, you buy a endpoint, how much does it take you to support it? Hardware and software costs, what you're spending directly. Risk of data breach, if your data is breached, then what is the cost? And how much of employee performance and engagement happens or improves because of productivity improvements and so on and so forth. So if you look at, there were 4 concepts earlier. There should be a concept called total cost of ownership. Then came the concept of return on investment, and then TEI. The reason why I'm mentioning it here specifically in the government sector, I think we still look at only TCO, which is IT cost and IT cost savings. We have not even gone to ROI, which is business impact, user efficiency, business effectiveness. Forget total economic impact, which actually looks at risk mitigation, risk versus reward, scalability, and flexibility as well. Now, increasingly you find that your government systems are competing with the private systems. You are far more population scale, and each government system, whether it's in the area of health, education, Panchayati Raj, roads, etc., is a nationally critical infrastructure, so the security cannot be taken lightly. So we thought if we do a study in the private sector and see what is the total economic impact of a more sturdier endpoint security, perhaps government may, and other sectors or other players in the private sector also may take note of that and start doing a total economic impact for all their IT investments. So we did this study over very large organizations, enterprise organizations. We've covered organizations that have close to 150,000 employees. And this is interview based, and the data that we got for this was taken from the organizations directly. So, to time to provision a PC is 120 minutes. From the time you receive to you get started on a PC, it takes 120 minutes. On a Mac, it takes 7 minutes. Support tickets on a PC are 6 annually. On a Mac, it's 1 annually. Average ticket cost per PC to fix that is 2,500 rupees. Average ticket cost per Mac is 666 rupees. PCs managed per IT engineering executive is 1,000 PCs, and Mac devices managed is 2,500, because you can manage a lot more of them together. And all of this adds up to cost. In our current procurement procedures, I don't think we take cognizance of any of these. So average cost for a PC, which is a notebook, is 60,000 rupees. Average cost for a Mac is 70,000. PC residual value after 4 years is only 2.5%. It's basically junk. Mac residual value after 4 years is still 20%. You can actually sell it if you're not using it. OS cost is 0. Endpoint security license per PC is $40, which is like all the antivirus and stuff that you put on it. On Mac, we need to put nothing. And this data is from our own before and after security costs. And energy costs are much lower. Everyone is bothered about the climate footprint and the carbon footprint. Energy cost for a PC is 850 rupees per annum. On a Mac, it's 211 because it takes very less power. So the total cost, if you do a 4-year calculation, you would find that a far securer, sturdier endpoint is actually about 5,000 rupees cheaper than a PC would. Now, I am sure if you talk to the PC company, they'll give some calculation that justifies this. But all I'm saying is that we really have to look at a total economic impact and see how all these things add up to our purchase decisions. So while we do, while we have still, this is work in progress, and we are trying to make a business document which we will publish as to what is the total economic impact of making a secure endpoint. So it's not about whether it's vendor X or vendor Y or vendor Z. Our focus is how do you have a secure endpoint which is less vulnerable and delivers to organizational effectiveness better, so that India can become a higher middle income country by 2047. So this part is looking at only that. Similarly, we have other areas where subcommittees have been formed, and that is where we have this panel, and they're going to be sharing with us what are the other areas we are going to look at. And like we have come out with a methodology on calculating a total economic impact of an endpoint, what could we do for network, what we could do for databases, what could we do it for cloud, and each one of them is an expert in those areas. So we'd like to get the ball rolling on that discussion. So Gursharan, is the format presentations or are we talking? Talking, okay. So start talking with Richa. So she was giving me a very nice simile about Sita Maiya and the Lakshman Rekha. So I thought that I'll get her to talk about it and say that what is this new Lakshman Rekha that cannot be breached.
I'll confess, I borrowed it from one of the events, but I thought it was so compelling. The topic I was trying to address, or we were trying to address, is network security. And the analogy was that why was Sita Haran happened? If she had not crossed Lakshman Rekha, it was not possible to kidnap her, right? She outstepped and the issue happened. Now, so if you think about Sita as end user, and that Lakshman Rekha is your data center and the perimeter that you have set, it doesn't hold true anymore, right? The network is about connectivity. Connectivity is our lifeline today. The revolution that has happened, especially in a country like us, that cell phones have brought is unparalleled. And now we have to make sure that every connection, because we want to do so much on that, is protected. So our end user, our Sita, is not in one place. It's not behind Lakshman Rekha. She is everywhere. And there has to be a Lakshman Rekha around her, wherever she goes. This was the analogy. But the point is that gone are the days, I think Neetaji was also referring to this, gone are the days when our crown jewels were in our data center. They were highly fortified and protected behind a network that only belonged to us. And our users came within that network and accessed our crown jewels, and they were safe. That is entirely not true. The whole thing has been, flipped upside down. Our crown jewels are everywhere, right? Because you're using SaaS applications, you are on your data center, you are on edges, they may be your own edges, but you're there. You are on public cloud, you may be on private setup of cloud. So your data, your most critical applications, your core systems are everywhere. And of course, Sita is everywhere, because our user is mobile. The most important equation today has become in any sector, private or public sector, is frictionless customer experience, user experience, which means you go to the user, the customer, in whichever channel they want, they wish to have. Do they want to come into your branch for banks and interact with you? Or maybe they're like me, nothing other than mobile. I don't want to even talk to anybody. Give me a fantastic app, it better work, and I'm good, but it also has to be very, very secured. So today the question, the equation of securing our network and connectivity at large, I'm not just going to say network, connectivity at large has become a multi-to-multi equation. It's not one-to-many, it is many-to-many across the board, which forces us to think a little differently from how we were thinking about it even 10 years ago or 5 years ago, as to how are we securing our data. The tenants are not going to change. I think I'll invite Rajiv to talk about it as well. We still need confidentiality, we need integrity, we need availability, right? Our CIA has not changed at all. But how you achieve it and where your players are completely different. You were talking about endpoint security, right? We are everywhere. Systems are everywhere, users are everywhere. Do you want to add something?
I'll roll with that. So she's given the scary scenario at the endpoint. Now, one of the scary places I've really been to is Bombay Stock Exchange, and they have this huge security operations center. And they were showing me. So can you just describe the kind of threats that come to your Bombay Stock Exchange, and from what kind of infrastructure have you? Look at the scenario that he described as the data center, and if you contextualize it to what Rucha has said, practically what is happening at your data center in terms of threats is now going to be happening at your endpoint, everywhere. So just imagine the magnitude of the problem.
So firstly, let me just give you, so nothing to be scared. This is business as usual. So stock exchanges are safe, so don't scare people that it is scary. Okay.
Not scary. How you made them secure?
No, so the reason is very simple. Like she said, today our Sita is still in the data center. Like, the jewel crowns are still within the data center, and the typical security systems is what we develop is defense in depth. So it is not one solution fits all or one for all. For different solutions, different tools are there. So it's definitely very, very difficult for anybody to come and penetrate into the systems. Like, for example, we get almost more than 15,000 attacks per hour on the DDoS side, per hour. So you can imagine in a day, and you have to prevent every attack, you have to nullify every one of them. So that's a kind of continuous. So it's not that. So that's why the dashboards are even not very, very relevant. It is just an indicative thing of what is happening, because the numbers are changing so fast. So it's like DDoS is one of the typical things which keep happening. Okay. Then there are people who are trying to misbrand, take away your sites. We also do we ourselves try and monitor what's floating in the dark webs. We have to subscribe to this kind of service. Somebody is trying to impersonate your site, or somebody is trying to, at so many times we have seen our clients who are our clients, their data is getting leaked somewhere. For the same endpoint issue which is there, if it's there on his endpoint, it's like a bank's client, we know it's not the bank's fault, but we know the client's password is known to somebody else. So we also educate our clients, somebody please fix your endpoint, something is wrong with your endpoint, nothing wrong with us. So we get that, so it's a 360 degree, let's say customer review. Like we go and tell the customers that you are our customer. Tomorrow it should not happen that somebody hacked my account, somebody operated my account. So when these kind of things which are happening at the endpoint, we monitor. Lot of things are there at the application vulnerabilities continuous, like what you mentioned. Like today, when we develop an application, earlier it was always meant for a desktop. It was always a PC version. Okay. Now you have to check whether it's vulnerability, how vulnerability is on a PC, how it works on a Mac, how it works on a mobile, how it works on an iPhone, how it works on different versions of mobile. So the problem is not only, the biggest problem with the Android is there's no standardization in Android. Okay. There are multiple Android OS versions. There are multiple manufacturers of Android itself who have multiple versions. Okay. The good part about iPhone is there is only one version. Okay, and there is always, all of them are downgrade compatible and upward compatible. So that's one good thing about it. But when you do it on an Android, we don't know whether the feature will work on all the Androids or not. So these are so many challenges when you're making the system work. So we have to worry about all these kind of securities. So even when you're making an application, it's easier to make an application than getting the VAPT or the security test pass.
Yeah. So, while we come to that, the strength of multiple ways people access through the endpoint, how the industry itself is transitioning. You made a very interesting point the other day we were talking, and you said companies like Cisco are no longer networking companies, they're becoming security companies. So how's that panning out and why?
See, because what's happening is, and this is where I think, since you're making this at the government level, this kind of policies of standardizations. See, today, the same problem what we're facing in the Android, the same problem is being faced in all the networking companies. Like when you're talking about in a data center, suppose if you have to coexist, you can coexist, but you're not going to inter-exist. Like today, data centers, people talk about spine and leaf technology, and that's a new technology which is coming up. So what happens is you have to scale up, like using a cloud kind of an infrastructure. Now, if you're having a Cisco spine, then all in your data center, you have to Cisco lift. So that means you're technically getting bogged down or married to an OEM. Now, tomorrow, that's a weak point because he can arm twist you, or like you're getting stuck up to it. Like, whereas we wanted in a servers, for example, we buy simple x86 servers, but we buy anybody's x86 server. It could be HP, it could be IBM's, it could be anybody's, Dell. So we don't have, if you have huge, so there is no risk of any OEM going down. But the risk is if you are stuck to nothing to any brand X, I'm not mentioning any because I don't know. Suppose if something happens to that company, that means your business risk is associated with that particular OEM vendor. So that was the main idea when BSC came out from this from this non-stop culture, just to make sure that you're not at the mercy of somebody else's availability. Like if tomorrow HP non-stop stop subscription, we will lose. Our business will shut down because our business dependency is somebody else manufacturing. So that is the whole thing that you need to have open stack on the networking layer also. So how you interconnect between the messages, or like on the software side, even on the government side, we are making a standardizing of APIs of exchanging data. Today, there is no standardization of if I have a Cisco switch and an HP switch sitting next to each other, two routers. And how do I have the end-to-end security? Say today, the security in the network layer is very good if you have Cisco at the core and the Cisco at the edge. Then your security works very well. But what happens is that means I cannot tell all my 10,000 clients that everybody must buy a Cisco. Only then an end-to-end encryption is successful. What if the opposite end does not have a corresponding match? So these are the problems. So that's why what we are saying, we need to have, that's why now all these companies are trying to, Cisco's and all, now they are making software defined, because ultimately the infrastructure, it's going to be a PC-based infrastructure and not a switch infrastructure on which we are going to put the softwares on that. So that's the way things are moving out in this particular area. But since India is so large, and if they can manufacture something for India as a stack, I am very sure these companies will do it, because today government is pushing others also to make policies and OSs change to support the India stack. I think so if this kind of things can come up at the policy level, it's going to make a very, very big difference, not only to us, including the entire government industry also, ecosystem. Because that's the biggest challenge of How do you standardize and make multiple people come into the same ecosystem and coexist with each other, not partitionalized? Today it's compartmentalized.
So, Rajiv, what KC is talking about is from, so the earlier the approach was you centralize and protect. So you put everything, block everything up in a data center and you protect it. Then you said that everything's going network. So then you fix the Cisco switch, which is also somewhat centralized, and protect the network. Now, possibly it is easier to do that at a data center level or little more complicated at a network level because then it brings in the complexity of interoperability. It's almost impossible to my mind at the endpoint level where you have to have interoperability and security and flexibility all rolled into one. So what could be the possible approach and how difficult this is?
Okay, thank you, Sameer. So the key point which Rucha said about having Lakshman Rekha, actually, and then going multi-type, getting out of that Rekha. So in fact, today we can draw an analogy from the pandemic we just had. Today, the threat is like a pandemic, and the people are the normal users. And everybody, like you got vaccinated, the normal vaccines don't work in that scenario. So now we have started calling XDRs or EDRs, which is like endpoint defense and response systems, which are slightly more powerful compared to the traditional signature-based antivirus systems. So EDRs are much more based on machine learning and artificial intelligence type of a response system because they keep connecting with the cloud-based environment and keep getting updated automatically to defend a user based on his usage pattern even. So they built a sort of a defense mechanism based on the usage. So we are no longer constricted by any particular vendor that may be providing the services, but we are moving into a zero trust architecture environment. So every enterprise or an organization needs to start working on a zero trust architecture where you don't trust anybody, any user, whether they're internal or external, you at least authenticate each time they need to access your crown jewels. So it's quite a radical change after that. What we were 5 or 10 years ago and what we are today, and in fact more complex or sophisticated attacks are getting built with these our conversational AI or generative AI which are coming in, like your Bard and Chat GPT and all those coming in. Now even the hackers can build sort of a phishing attacks much more efficient than what they have been doing up till now. And similarly, the defense has to step up to ensure that they are not able to breach the defenses. But that's what happened. And if you don't have those defenses in up to date all the time, like Sameerji, you were saying, even for SKOCH, you have got a very high-end EDR systems built in. If you don't have, you end up like AIMS, where your 20-25 days of operations suffer, and your brand value or your confidential data is is going for a toss. So while doing defense, there's another aspect which is coming up very clearly now is on the data protection or data privacy for normal users as well. So it's a much more complex environment which we are looking at tomorrow, and that's much more, I'll say, complex role even for the CIOs to lead their teams into ensuring that, one, they keep the assets of national importance very safe. Like even in our case, like I'm from Times of India, and during the events of national interest, our network gets around 2 billion attacks a day, which is more than what Bombay Stock Exchange may be getting. So, but that happens only in a specific time, especially when like general elections happening or budgets are happening. So at that point of time, we get attacked because people want to probably gain knowledge or information, because information is is the key today, or the value of value today.
So you talked about the importance of endpoint security and the lack of it. What is the problem it can cause? Because I think when you go and have a CFO level discussion, rather than saying that cost of this is X and the cost of this is X.2, you also have to have a conversation with them that if you don't have this, then what's the cost of not having it? And what's the business impact? So do you have conversations like that, Richa? Or
yeah,
how do you justify buying Macs? You
Yeah.
have lots of them.
So
So, simple
I
question.
usually don't have discussion with CFO. I'm slightly more evolved organization, so we have to talk directly to the CEO or the board when we have to justify. And I think uh, they or the shareholders are very cognizant of the fact that security is tied to your brand value as well as the financial health of the organization. If you are not able to secure the organization, in fact, even the audit committees, we are asked to tell how you have secured the entire enterprise. If we are not able to, and they are sharp, they are able to pin, like from being from media, we only educate people what they should be aware of. And if we are not able to even get the basic safety measures in place, I think then we are not doing our job right. And it's easy to justify once you say that if we don't have this particular thing, the loss is that, and there are standards available. So today, the NIST standards defines that your average in India is somewhere around 2.2 or 2.3 out of 5 scoring. If I am say 2 points, if I am below that, I'm actually risking my my enterprise or for the particular industry segment at what level my security should be. If I'm above that, I'm safe, may not be secure, because to be at the level 5, you have to go to a military grade level of security. But I think the fundamental or the basic security which is up to mark with the industry standard threats which are there, I think that much we need to have for our organization. Else we are not worth our salt, or we are not justifying our position in the organization.
So we hope that this work that we're going to be doing on endpoint, we would be presenting it to the government, to the policymakers, and I just think that that may bring about this change from this L1 purchase and go towards, what is happening if like AIMS, your system is attacked and your entire system is down, then would you be looking at those 2,000 rupees you saved or not? Now, giving another dimension to the same problem is, like we said, now you go to, from data center, you move to cloud. And then you have this new beast called the hybrid cloud. So you have a data center and a cloud, and you have a on-premises cloud. Now, all these things are fairly complicated. They're happening also in the government. And how is this panning out with somebody like UTI? Because additionally, you are also a regulated entity. So there are some regulations to be managed. And all of this, how do you do a TEI?
So, I will speak English and Hindi, okay? Do you know a term, we know a term called Nagrik, right? And how many of you know there is a term with the Data Protection Act which has come, Digital Nagrik? How do we define the Digital Nagrik? And that is the era which is we are and we are going to be. And with this, if the Nagrik has changed from Digital Nagrik, I remember that Cisco ad, sab badal do. Sab badal do. What they spoke, attack, botnets, sabko badal do. What is security? Two terms. Security means take care of your data in motion. Means you secure when it is transmitting and when the data is at rest. Okay? क्या करो? आप encrypt करो. Anything beyond that of data security is concerned. Many of the times, when these terms are used, we get boggle-minded. Okay, so what do we do? Like, we are from India, right? We can't think of, we have got some juggler, like some jugaad. Summarize it, something here which we can understand, okay? when a farmer is in a village, he doesn't know yaar, how to use my mobile. Can I do something for him? Okay. Can I help him or complement with something called conversation commerce? I really like the idea of Dr. Neeta ma'am and the vision she has. And thank you for that. We have to relook at, or we say that unload and reload, right? That the time has come, we have to unload and reload and make it simple. Things are very, very simple, okay? People make it very, very complicated by using a lot of terms. And whenever I speak, I make them realize that things are simple and look at it simple way. When we are going to teach our children, when they will say that there's an attack, bot attack, DDoS attack, there is an IP spoofing, there is an man-in-the-middle attack, they'll say, sir, Papa, or sir, what is this? Yes, these are the terms, and these are the weakness of technology which has been learned and adopted some technique to bombard with some small programs which will make your system unavailable. And that is another aspect, what Kersey was saying, that if his system, a stock exchange, is down for a minute, you can see what is the impact on the economy of India would happen, right? And what is the reputation our country would have in front of others. While I'll touch the question which he has raised on the cloud, but before that, I wanted to touch upon certain things which many forums, they are not, discussed. Today, we have to carry huge responsibility, the India talent, okay? The India talent is going to be looked for all IT support globally, and it's happening. And with a lot of automation coming into this world, you will see lot of responsibility, and probably we have to diverse, okay? You don't know, tomorrow your child may travel to US or some UK in some company, and he is supporting IT systems there. So realize that responsibility, and we have to take it and move it. While coming to the data center, what question was raised, ask each one of you, is running a data center in your organization, in your premise, is your business? It's not, right? We are coming from BFSI or from government. They said, why don't I go and give it to somebody who are really expert of those, okay? And I can share those infrastructure and that expertise, because today it is not only Windows, right? There are hundreds of operating systems which are lying. There are thousands of open sources applications which are available. Where is the skill set to run? Use them. Leverage your platforms, those platforms, in the benefit of your organization and the benefit of your customers. So what I say is that don't set up your data centers. Host your infrastructure somewhere else. On the private data center, a lot of options are available. Governments are also coming out, lot of initiatives, Meghdut, community cloud, and the direction also has come now recently from SEBI that how to adopt cloud and what are the 9 principles that you should take care while adopting cloud. Let me tell you, in 2016, a thought came in my mind when Unit Trust of India, very old, and we have around 26 lakhs investors who are more than 50 and 60 years old, and they are still there with us. I mean, they are 30, 40 years are there with us, and we have to support them. So when it was asked to us, why do you are running these erstwhile server rooms in your premises? So they said, what is the vision? I said, tomorrow, everything is going to be moved on the cloud. Let us move everything on the cloud. But then the question came, how do you secure the cloud? Securing the cloud is tremendous skill set, tremendous task. But if you, architecture is good secured architecture. At once upon a time, let me tell you, the AWS, when I was setting a public cloud and private cloud, AWS cannot build a security architecture the way I wanted, or the way my team has said. They have to brought down the engineering team and set up the defense and layer, defense in depth layer, which Kasi just mentioned, that defense in depth security layer is highly important, because the threat landscapes are not only exponentially increasing, but they are target attacks. BSE, our stock exchange are getting attacks. Our government sites are getting attacked. Our Aadhaar repository is getting attacked. We know how to protect. It's not that we don't know how to protect. But then certain things, what happens? It's a voluminous attack. When the voluminous attacks comes, you have to have a different technique. And all those techniques, whoever is taking the responsibility should know that what are the techniques. Because let me tell you that if the policeman doesn't know the techniques of the thief, the policeman is not going to protect you, okay?
Anyway, so thank you very much, Sanjeevan. The basic idea was to introduce your private sector counterparts and their thought process, and they've been hearing what great things all of you have been doing, and see if together we can, come back with some recommendations, some reports, some policy impact that can help towards making India a higher middle income country by 2047. As you noticed, that as far as the private sector is concerned, I think security is a very, very big key with scalability and cost, which is what they're worrying about. And I'm sure that even in the government, these are the three factors that you should be worrying about. And if some of these reports can really help cover some common ground, it would be wonderful. So before I move on to the awards part of it, any questions anyone has? Any questions? Anything anyone from the panel would like to say as a final comment?
Talking about security, many years ago, we would remember that it was a small part of a big tech organization, right? Now it is a big part of entire tech organization. But I think where we are headed, this is all of our problem. He talked about board, right? It is board down, everybody's how to be secured. So where I think private sector and public sector can come together is how to make sure that the lowest educated, I want to say, lowest aware user is also protected. Right, our inclusion part of the user is, we work in rural area financing, door-to-door farmers. How to make them also aware of the threats and be secured from it. That should be our joint, agenda. That at India level, get standardization and get policies in so that our OEMs are forced to come to a common ground. Otherwise, what is happening is now there are different kinds of security companies. Like, I will make a security mesh for you because you have different things everywhere, and I'll tell you how to get the dashboards out of it, and so on and so forth. So not that these are not good solutions. These are good solutions, but they add layer of complications with every layer. So this is where I believe we come together to protect every single user that we have.
Thank you very much. Any final comment?
No, I will just add to what she said, but actually if you see this recently, a couple of months back, there was a government initiative called Cyber Swachhata campaign, which was run by but it was run mostly by the banks. Okay, so, and that was not coming from from a government initiative, it was more being run as it was told to all the organizations, it was sort of a diktat. Sab log kuch karo. So everybody started just putting up websites or this thing, but it has to be more inclusive, more practical at the school level, at the senior citizen, because these are the vulnerable lot, because the senior citizens or the housewife, and even the tech guys are also very vulnerable. That's not an issue, because many cases which I have seen, I have worked with some other police at some point in time, all the frauds, all the stupid things are done by the tech guys themselves, like, though they are working in the tech guys. One more point I just wanted to mention about when we are talking about this Mac versus PC thing. One of the practical industry problems in this thing, then the amount of business applications that India uses, like I'm not going, India uses on the PC is far, far higher than the Mac. I think that's one of the major concerns why people are not, it's not only the cost part of it, but adaptability, acceptability, usability, I would say, let me say it's usability. I think that's where the challenge is also. So it's not to take away the juice from the PC guys. I mean, it's like the Microsoft has gone deep rooted inside into this. So this is one of the areas I think we did not discuss. That's why I just want to make that point.
Yeah, absolutely. So we need more apps that work on a native secure environment. So you can't release your version for a Mac and then say I'm being attacked.
Okay, so I'll probably stress on the awareness at the user level, at the grassroots level, protecting them. I think that's where the private and the government agencies can cooperate very well. I don't know if most of you may have gone to even Singapore. The metro stations there have a lot of these posters out there about cybersecurity, how the social engineering is being used to siphon off money from innocent people. So that's something more of an education about, an awareness has to be brought in India as well, right up till like every lowest level, because that's where the amount of money being siphoned off by hackers or by social engineering from innocent people is mind-boggling right now. It's going into billions of dollars per year, and it's a menace actually. So one, awareness is very important. And yes, the second point I would also like to say, so I'm a die-hard Mac user. Any techies actually, if you take, or developers you take, they find Mac much more easier to use because of the performance is much better, the security is much more inherent in it. The fundamental architecture differences, the kernel is actually detached from operating system, whereas in the Microsoft PC environment, it is ingrained. That's why the attack is very simple, is easy to get into the PC environment much easily compared to the Mac. But overall, the global studies are turning out now very well in favor of Mac if you have to use it as an enterprise operating system. I'll second that. But yes, you will face a lot of problem, especially opposition from even the CFO in getting into that. But if you're able to explain it well, you can get into that. The another aspect which is holding out Mac back is something related to compliance and audits, because you need to install separate systems on Mac if you need to control them from the back end for an enterprise security and data privacy pieces. So those are some of the constraints, but I think larger and progressive organizations are going into Mac very easily. There's not much on the, except for some legacy applications, I think most of them do work on Mac now pretty easily. Yeah, thanks.
Final words from Sanjeev.
I will take 2 minutes. We are not here to market Mac, but let me.
Also, let me give a disclaimer. There is zero financial support from Apple or Mac for this conference.
But this is the research done by Scotch, and we all were there, and it was very surprising figures which has come. But the question arises, where do I use Mac? My core applications are running on the Windows platform, majorly 95%. Then if I cannot run my core application on the Mac, what is the use? Even it gives good benefit in terms of 5-year ROI, and it brings really a value add, because what is the value add when he was discussing? Not a single anti-malware or a security product you can install on the Mac. That is the value add. Now, having said this, where you will provide Mac to your task force or your staff. From our studies, what has come out is that in any organization, 30% people who are core, who are really work in the back end, who use legacy application, your core business application, while 70% of the task force are generally on the field. And all these applications are now built on browser, okay? So don't have a client server, so you don't have to install any client there. It's a browser-based application. I felt, and we felt that why don't everybody should start looking at Mac, because it is giving you huge benefits and value add at those task force level where 70% people can use it. And those are browser-based, seamlessly you can use without any antivirus or security product. I think that's a huge benefit, right? And there's a data safety. So my last word would be that look at it, see the benefit, look at the task force, the Salesforce area. Probably those applications are built on your Java platform or Windows platform. You can continue working with Windows, but since the figures have come so good and there is a value add, there's a data safety from Mac, so I can only say that look at it.
Thank you very much. So enough of technology. Now is the time for the awards, what we've been anxiously waiting for. So thank you very much to the panel.